I used to think I had a type. If you looked at my dating history like it was a little museum exhibit, 3 ex-boyfriends and a handful of we're just seeing where it goes situations, you'd see the same theme over and over. Tallish men with big laughs and small vocabularies for feelings. Guys who could talk for an hour about craft beer or fantasy football or the exact specs of their new headphones. But the moment I said something like, "Hey, I felt weird when you canceled on me," their eyes would glaze over like I'd started reciting tax law. I became the girl who was chill, the girl who didn't mind, the girl who didn't need much, except I did. I just didn't know how to ask for it without feeling like I was begging. So when Alex showed up, he didn't feel like my type at all. He felt like an interruption. It was late November in Chicago, that particular gray that makes the whole city look like it's holding its breath. I ducked into a coffee shop off Milwaukee to thaw my hands and my mood, and I was standing there pretending to read the pastry labels like I had all the time in the world, when I noticed the guy behind the counter wasn't the barista. He was a customer, but he was leaning over the glass like he was getting a private tour. The barista held up 2 cookies. "These are the ginger molasses, these are the rosemary shortbread." The guy, Alex, put a hand to his chest like he was overwhelmed. "Don't do this to me. You know I'm weak." His voice was warm, a little musical, and his face did this thing where the smile reached his eyes, like it had nowhere else to go. He had longish hair tucked behind one ear, not quite a bob, not quite, "I should cut this." And he wore a soft sweater the color of oatmeal that looked like it had never been yelled at by a dryer. I caught myself watching him the way you watch someone pet a dog, like, "Oh, you're gentle." He glanced at me and didn't do that thing men do where they scan you like a menu. He just made eye contact, held it, and smiled like he was happy to share the room. "I'm sorry," he said, stepping aside. "I got emotionally attached to the cookies. Go ahead." I laughed, surprised at the sound coming out of me. "It's okay. I'm emotionally attached to warmth, so we're all coping." He grinned. "Then you're in the right place. Their chai tastes like a hug." I don't know what possessed me. Maybe the weather. Maybe the way his sincerity didn't feel like a performance. But I said, "Do you come here a lot?" "And because the universe loves a cliché," he said, "only when I'm trying to convince myself I'm the kind of person who has a routine." He introduced himself like it mattered, like I mattered, and when I told him my name, Aaron, he repeated it back to me once softly, as if to make sure he got it right. Nobody did that anymore. People swallowed names like they were optional. We talked for 5 minutes, about nothing, about the kind of nothing that still feels like something. The cold, the way the city smelled like wet wool, the best seats on the blue line if you didn't want someone's backpack in your ribs. When my drink was ready, I expected the conversation to end the way all quick encounters ended, an exchange of numbers if you were bold, a smile if you weren't. Instead, Alex said, "Can I ask you something that might be too forward?" I lifted my cup like a shield. "Depends. Is it about my blood type?" He laughed again, that full-bodied laugh that sounded like he wasn't afraid of taking up space with joy. "No, I'm trying to get better at asking for what I want in small ways. So, I want to take you out, like a real date, not a we'll hang out sometime date." My brain did a hard stop. A real date, in 2025, in this economy. I almost made a joke to protect myself, but his expression was so open it made my usual armor feel embarrassing. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Yeah? A real date sounds nice." "Great." He didn't pounce. He didn't act like I just handed him a trophy. He just looked pleased, like the world had made room for him and he was grateful. "Do you like museums, or are you more of a let's walk around and complain about capitalism person?" I blinked. "I'm both. I contain multitudes." His eyes lit. "Perfect. I can work with multitudes." That should have been my first clue. Because when Alex asked me out, it didn't stop at asking. It turned into planning, like he saw dates as something you crafted, not something you stumbled into after 3 drinks. That night I got a text that said, "Hey Erin, this is Alex, cookie enthusiast. I'm free Saturday. 2 options. 1, Art Institute, hot chocolate after, or 2, used bookstore, record shops, tacos. No pressure either way. Also, if you have food restrictions, tell me so I can be appropriately respectful and dramatic about it." I stared at my phone, thumb hovering, a weird heat in my chest that wasn't just flattery. It was consideration. He had already made space for me to have needs. When I picked option 2, he replied, "Bookstore it is. I will bring my best opinions and my most flattering scarf. Most flattering scarf." I could practically hear him saying it with a little bow. Saturday came and I showed up early out of habit, ready to be the one who waited, the one who pretended it didn't matter if someone was late. But Alex was already there, standing under the awning with his hands in his pockets. Scarf indeed dramatic, deep green, soft, like something stolen from a period drama. When he saw me, his face brightened so hard I felt it in my bones. "You look amazing," he said immediately. Not in a greasy way. Not like a compliment was a coin he expected to get back. He said it like it was a fact he wanted me to have, like he was handing me a warm object. I did the automatic thing. "Oh, this old—" "Nope," he cut in, gentle but firm. "You don't get to minimize it. You look amazing. And your eyeliner is sharp enough to cut glass. I respect it." I laughed, but my cheeks burned. I realized with a little shock that nobody had complimented me like that I couldn't even remember. Past boyfriends said hot when they wanted something, pretty when I was mad. Compliments as currency. Alex's compliment landed like a blanket. Inside the bookstore, he didn't try to impress me with how many authors he knew. He asked me questions, real ones. What kind of books make you feel safe? What's a story you loved as a kid? Do you reread things or do you chase the high of something new? When I answered, he listened like my words mattered, like he wasn't just waiting for his turn to talk. His eyes stayed on my face, not my chest, not the room behind me. When I said I was embarrassed that I still loved certain romantic novels, he tilted his head and said, "Why embarrassed? Being moved is not a crime." At the record shop, he picked out an album and held it up. "This one is for cooking and thinking you're the main character." "You cook?" I asked. He shrugged, bashful in a way that felt practiced, like he'd had to defend softness before. "I try. I'm decent." "Do you have a signature dish?" He looked at me, eyes bright with mischief. "I make a risotto that has ended at least one situationship. Not on purpose, just you can't eat that kind of comfort food and then pretend you don't have feelings." I snorted. Weaponized risotto. Exactly. Emotional support carbs. By the time we got tacos, I realized something unsettling. I was relaxed, like my body had stopped bracing for disappointment. We sat in a little corner booth, our knees close, and he asked permission before doing things I'd never been asked about before. "Can I hold your hand?" he said right before crossing the street. "Can I kiss you?" he murmured, outside the taqueria, the air smelling like grilled onions and cold. And each time, the question didn't kill the mood. It made the mood safer, like consent was part of the romance, not a legal form. When he kissed me, it was soft and slow, like he wasn't trying to win, like he was trying to be with me. I went home that night and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while the city hummed outside my window. My phone buzzed. "Had fun today. You're easy to be around. Also, I'm sorry in advance if I fall in love with your laugh. It's rude how good it is." I pressed my hand to my face, half laughing, half dizzy. Was this what dating could feel like? Over the next few weeks, Alex became a steady presence in my life in a way that didn't feel possessive. He checked in without interrogating. He remembered things I said like they were sticky notes in his brain. One time I told him I hated when people sprung phone calls on me. The next day he texted, "Hey, can I call for 5 minutes? If not, totally fine. You're the boss of your nervous system. The boss of your nervous system." Who talks like that? The thing that really scrambled me, though, the thing that made me start telling my friends, half joking, "He's a better girlfriend than any man I've dated," was how naturally he did what I'd spent years doing for other people. He planned, not just dates, but moments. A Tuesday night when I'd had a brutal day at work, I came home to find him at my door with a tote bag and a look of righteous determination. "I heard you had a day," he said, stepping inside, "so I brought supplies." He unpacked them on my kitchen table like he was prepping for surgery. My favorite soup from the place down the street, a tiny loaf of bread, a bottle of that sparkling water I liked, a candle that smelled like cedar and vanilla. He'd even brought a little packet of those chocolate-covered almonds I always bought at the airport. "How did you—" I stared at the almonds. "Why do you know about these?" He shrugged. "You mentioned them once when we were talking about travel, and I wrote it down in my notes app because I'm a psychopath." I laughed, but my throat tightened. "You don't have to do all this," I said, the old script sliding out. He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "I want to." And it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't him sacrificing, it was him choosing, like care was something he liked giving. Later, while we ate soup on my couch, he asked, "Do you want advice or do you want company?" I blinked. "Company," I admitted. Done. He let me talk. He didn't fix me. He just stayed. When I cried, he didn't panic. He handed me a tissue and rubbed slow circles on my wrist, like he understood that emotions weren't emergencies. When I apologized for crying, because of course I did, he said, "Hey, please don't apologize for being a person in front of me." After that night, I started noticing the little ways he moved through the world, the way he spoke to servers with respect, the way he didn't make fun of things that were girly, the way he wore a thin silver ring on his index finger and a tiny hoop in one ear, like he'd decided long ago that rules about masculinity were mostly for people who were scared. One afternoon, we wandered into a thrift store because the wind was punishing and we needed shelter. The store smelled like dust and lavender detergent. Alex drifted toward the women's section like it was magnetic. He ran his fingers over fabrics, silk, satin, cotton, his expression thoughtful, almost tender. I tried to keep my face neutral, like I was cool, like I didn't care. But inside, my brain did that frantic cataloging thing. Men's section, women's section. What does it mean? What does it say about him? About me? Alex pulled a soft lavender cardigan off the rack and held it up to his chest. "This is criminally cozy. You'd look good in that," I said before I could stop myself. He smiled, eyes crinkling. "You think?" "Yeah," I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. "It suits you." He disappeared into the fitting room. When he came out, he looked radiant. The cardigan hung off him just right, the lavender bringing out the warmth in his skin. He turned in the mirror, then looked at me with a shy kind of pride. "I feel like myself in this," he said. Something in my chest softened. "Then you should get it." He did. At the register, the cashier called it a cute girlfriend sweater. Alex didn't flinch. He didn't correct her, he just said, "Thank you," like the label wasn't an insult. On the walk back to my apartment, he caught my hand. "Can I tell you something without you making it a whole thing?" "I make everything a whole thing," I warned. He squeezed my fingers. "I know. It's one of your charms." I rolled my eyes, but my mouth did the thing it did around him, smiling without permission. "I spent a long time thinking I had to be a certain kind of man," he said. His breath puffed in the cold. And the truth is, when I stopped trying so hard to be that, I got better at being present, with people, with myself. I looked at him, the lavender cardigan peeking out from his coat like a secret. So your feminine side made you emotionally present? He laughed softly. Is that what you think? I don't know, I admitted. I've never dated someone who does the things you do without making it feel like I'm asking for too much. He went quiet for a moment, then said, it's not a feminine thing. It's a human thing. I learned it from women, sure, from watching how my mom kept everything together, from being friends with girls who carried the emotional labor like it was oxygen. I learned what I didn't want to be. And also, he glanced at me. I like softness. I like care. I like making things beautiful. And I'm done pretending those are weaknesses. My eyes burned, sudden. That's really attractive, I said, voice rough. Good, he said, smiling. Because I'm not changing. The more we fell into each other's lives, the more my friends reacted like I'd found a unicorn. They'd ask questions with raised eyebrows at brunch. So, he plans dates? My friend Talia said, as if I'd said he could levitate. He checks in, I said. He remembers things. I struggled for language. He does the girlfriend stuff. Talia laughed. Maybe you're dating a man who was raised by women. Maybe, I said, but something in me bristled, like we were trying to give it a neat explanation so we didn't have to be surprised by it. My other friend, Jessie, leaned forward. Wait, you said he wears, like, women's clothes sometimes? Sometimes, I said, defensive before anyone attacked. Not as a costume, just because he likes them. Jessie nodded slowly. So, is he, like... There it was. The cliff edge of a label. I felt my own mind rush to fill in the blank. Is he gay? Is he bi? Is he trans? Is he non-binary? Is this a phase? Is he secretly something else? And then the part of me that always needed to understand, to categorize, to be prepared, she started turning it into a problem to solve. I went home that day and caught myself with my laptop open, typing into a search bar. How to know if your boyfriend is... I froze with my fingers on the keys. I stared at the unfinished sentence like it was a trap I'd set for myself. Because what I really meant was, how to know if your boyfriend will leave you. How to know if this good thing has a catch. How to know what to call it so you can tell people without them looking at you like you're lying. And then, God, it was so small, so stupid. I thought about the way Alex had asked permission to kiss me, the way he'd brought soup without being asked, the way he'd said, "You're the boss of your nervous system," the way he'd looked in the thrift store mirror and whispered, "I feel like myself in this." I closed the laptop. That night, Alex came over with grocery bags and a grin. "I'm making you dinner," he announced, kicking off his boots. "And before you protest, I want you to know I already budgeted the emotional energy for your resistance." "You're impossible," I muttered, but I was smiling. In my kitchen, he moved like he belonged there, washing his hands, tying an apron around his waist, humming under his breath. The apron was a ridiculous shade of pink with tiny embroidered strawberries. I'd bought it as a joke months ago. He wore it like it was armor. "You look like a domestic deity," I told him. He bowed. "Thank you. Worship is accepted in the form of compliments and letting me stir in peace." I watched him chop onions with careful precision, his fingers quick and confident. A thin silver ring flashed in the light. He caught me watching and tilted his head. "What's going on behind your eyes?" he asked. I hesitated. Old me would have lied. Old me would have said nothing and swallowed the fear like a pill. But Alex had made honesty feel possible. Not easy, but possible. "I almost tried to label you today," I admitted. The words tasted like vulnerability. Like, put you in a box so I could explain you to my friends, or to myself. He didn't flinch. He didn't get angry. He just set the knife down and turned to face me fully, hands resting on the counter like he was grounding himself. "Okay," he said softly. "Thank you for telling me." "I'm sorry," I blurted. "Don't apologize yet," he said, not unkind. "Just tell me what you were feeling." I swallowed. "I think I'm scared, because you're different, and it's good. And when something is good, my brain starts looking for the hidden cost." His expression softened, so gentle it made my chest ache. "That makes sense," he said. "Do you want to know how I think about it?" "Yes," I whispered. He took a breath. "I've spent a lot of time trying on words," he said. "Some fit for a while, some didn't. And what I've learned is, the label is only useful if it helps me feel free. If it starts feeling like a cage, I don't want it." I nodded, throat tight. He stepped closer, careful, like he was approaching an animal that might spook. "You don't have to explain me to your friends," he said. "You don't have to defend me, and you don't have to solve me. If you have questions, you can ask me. If you're confused, you can tell me. But I don't want you to turn me into a concept when I'm right here." Tears jumped to my eyes so fast it was embarrassing. "I don't want to do that," I said. "I know," he said. "I can tell. You're not cruel. You're just used to guarding your heart." That line hit like a key turning, because it was true. I'd been guarding my heart so long I didn't know how to set it down without feeling naked. Alex lifted a hand, paused an inch from my cheek. "Can I?" he asked. "Yes," I breathed. His palm cupped my face, warm and steady. He leaned his forehead against mine, and for a moment the kitchen disappeared. The hum of the fridge, the smell of onions, the city noise outside. There was only the quiet between us, the kind of quiet that felt like trust. "I'm not a better girlfriend than any man you dated," he murmured, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I'm just trying to be a good partner, a good person, and I'm doing it my way." My laugh came out watery. "You are a better girlfriend," I insisted, because humor was my life raft. "You plan dates, you communicate, you compliment me like it's a hobby, you listen, you bring soup, you wear strawberry aprons. If that's not girlfriend behavior, then what is?" He chuckled, then grew serious again. "If calling me that makes you feel affectionate, I can live with it," he said. "But I don't want you to say it like men are allowed to be careless and women are expected to be kind. I don't want you to excuse other men by turning my care into something feminine." I blinked, struck. "Oh. Care shouldn't be gendered," he said simply. "It should be standard." I felt something shift in me, subtle but seismic, like a door I didn't know was locked had just opened. Later we ate dinner at my small table while snow started falling outside the window, fat flakes turning the streetlights into halos. Alex talked about a song he'd been obsessed with, then asked me about my day, not as a script, as a real question. When I told him about my friend Jesse's, "So is he like?" he rolled his eyes dramatically. "Ah, yes," he said, "the great curiosity, the hunger for labels." I almost fed it, I admitted. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "And then you didn't." I stared at our hands, his ring, my chipped nail polish, the way our fingers fit like they'd been practicing. I stopped, I said slowly, because it didn't feel like love. It felt like control, like if I could name you, I could predict you, and I don't want to predict you, I want to know you. His eyes went shiny, just for a second. He blinked it away, but I saw it. Emotion, unashamed. "God," he said softly, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a while." The next weekend he planned a date again, of course. He texted me a list, Comfortable shoes, something warm, and an openness to being mildly surprised. He picked me up and led me through the city like it was a story he'd written with room for improvisation. We ended up at a small botanical conservatory, the kind tucked into a park like a secret. Inside it was humid and green, glass fogged with warmth. Plants dripped, the air smelled like soil and citrus. My glasses immediately steamed up. Alex laughed and wiped my lenses with the hem of his sweater, like it was the most normal thing in the world to take care of someone in public. We wandered through the rooms, reading tiny placards, admiring the stubborn beauty of living things in winter. In the orchid section, he stopped and looked at a flower that was pale pink with a deep purple throat. "That one," he said quietly, "looks like it has something to say." "You always think everything has feelings," I teased. "Everything does," he said, dead serious. Then he glanced at me and smiled. "Especially you." I leaned into his side. The warmth of him seeped into me. And in that moment I felt it, my old instinct, the one that wanted to grab him by the edges and name him and hold him still so I could be sure he wouldn't vanish. I felt it, and then I let it pass. Because he wasn't a mystery to solve. He was a person to love. On the way out, snow started again, soft and quiet. The world looked like it had been dusted with sugar. Alex held my hand in his gloved one and asked, "Are you okay?" I could have said yes. I could have said fine. I could have said nothing and saved the truth for later. Instead, I said, "I'm happy," and meant it. He stopped walking. Right there on the sidewalk, with cars hissing by and snow melting on our coats, he turned to face me like I was the only thing that mattered. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Always." "I don't know what words I'll use forever," he said. "I don't know exactly how I'll describe myself 10 years from now. But I know this. With you, I feel safe enough to be honest." My throat tightened. "You make me feel safe enough to be honest too," I said, voice shaking. "And I think that's what I've been looking for this whole time. Not a type, not a label, not a role." He smiled, slow and relieved. "Just a person who shows up." "Yeah," I whispered, "a person who shows up." He leaned in, waiting for my nod, and when I gave it, he kissed me, soft, warm, unhurried. Snowflakes landed in his hair and melted, little vanishing stars. Later, when I told my friends about him, I didn't say, "He's basically a girlfriend." I didn't say, "He's feminine." I didn't try to make them understand him in one sentence. I said, "He treats me well." And when someone tried to ask the question, "So is he like?" I smiled and said, "He's Alex." It felt like the truest answer I'd ever given.